Welcome in, everybody. It is a Wednesday edition of Denmark and Marsh Hurricane Edition. Milton is well on its way. Best wishes to everybody down in the Tampa area as they're looking like they're gonna get the brunt of it up here in Jacksonville. We're a little bit further north, but we're gonna get some as well. So if you're in this great state of Florida and you're gonna get hit, please stay safe during this hurricane. And in the meantime, listen to us preview this Tennessee game a little bit. Florida plays Tennessee on Saturday, obviously. Big win, probably the biggest win of the season for the Gators against UCF last Saturday. It's the best they've looked all season, in my opinion, and I think probably in Dylan's as well. And look, they got a much tougher test going up to Knoxville. They're going to have an angry, hostile crowd. I'm not breaking any news here that crowd does not like the Florida Gators whatsoever. That's a night game. They're going to be all nice and liquored up and out for blood. And the football team is going to be pissed off over a disappointing loss that they had to Arkansas last week. So kind of a perfect storm, Dylan, to be probably an uphill battle for the Gators. But they did show some life last week, so hopefully we see them play a little bit better overall and we see what happens.
Yeah, best wishes to Lieutenant Dan down in Tampa. I kind of went over the show with him. You know, he's staying down his boat. He's the viral dude the last couple of days in Tampa. But on to the game. Yeah, I mean, you know, after the A&M game, a lot of people were pretty much done with this team. They were done with Billy Napier. They were pretty much done with the season. And then now they've won 2 games against, let's be honest, 2 not good teams. So you've gotten a little bit of morale back, and you figured out your offense a little bit now. For the rest of the year, you're going to use Lagway and Mertz and some pieces to the offense. And, you know, the only question is going to be for this game and for the next 2 weeks or I guess for next week, second week they're in a bye, is, you know, what's going to be the status of Mizell and Eugene Wilson? Can you have Eugene Wilson, Mizell with Badger and a full healthy load of bags behind you? Because we haven't seen that yet. So that's going to be the number one thing. And, you know, the biggest test is going to be for this offensive line. You're going to play probably one of the best defensive lines you've played all year. Possibly in Tennessee, probably the single best defensive lineman. I forget his name, number 21. Plays Pierce in the interior. So that's where a lot of my eyes are going to be for the game when we start on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree. Real quick, I don't know if you have it up on your phone, Dylan, there in a podcast studio, but something that we probably should do a better job about in the show is answering some comments we get throughout the show. So we got comments here. If you want to leave comments and have us answer them within reason. If you say something dumb, we're probably just going to ignore it. But asking good questions stuff, we might take them along the way, keep the show going. We love everybody that tunes in and interacts with us. Dylan, yes to everything you just said. This is an all hands on deck type of game, right? This is one of those games where, you know, Eugene Wilson, like, maybe he's not 100%, but if he's 90%, we're like, we need you, bro. Like, need you playing. Mizell, same thing. Trayon Webb, same thing. Some of the guys that didn't play last week and in some weeks before that, I need you on the field this game. This is if you can competently play football for the Florida Gators on Saturday, you got to be doing it. We talked about this a little bit on our Monday show, Dylan. We were kind of still recapping UCF and sort of bleeding into this week, but we're kind of fully turning the page on this episode to preview it. To me, Dylan, what's the formula that Florida pulls out a miracle here? Because I think realistically, a Gator fan's expectation is, okay, just stay competitive. Don't get blown out. You know, fourth quarter, give me something worth watching. But if Florida pulls off a miracle, how does that happen? What's the formula for that? To me, they need to win the turnover margin by at least 2, maybe even 3, I think, to win this game. You've got what Tennessee wants a track meet, right? That's how they like to win ball games. If Tennessee won every ball game 49-42, that's okay with them, all right? That's how they like to play, up-tempo, fast, the race to the most points because they got an offense that's going to beat you in that race. Florida showed a little bit of life on defense this past week. They got to show even more life And Florida needs to muddy this game up a little bit. Okay, so that's the two things that got to happen if Florida's going to pull off a miraculous victory is, well, three things. You got to have those guys play that we discussed, those kind of on-the-fence guys. They all need to play. Everybody's got to be contributing that's healthy and can play. Second, you got to win the turnover battle by at least 2, probably 3. And third, make this game a little bit of a rock fight for Tennessee and make it a little bit uglier than they would like to play.
Yeah, I was looking before we started this. Florida on third down, they weren't able to be on the field at all in the first 2 games. I'm not counting the Stanford game against Miami and A&M. Third down, Miami, 1 for 9. Third down against A&M, 2 for 9. Last 2 weeks, 7 for 9 against Mississippi State. And then against UCF, they were 6 for 13, but they were 4 for 4 on their first drive. So, in other words, they had a good script. They had 4 third down conversions. They got them all. But if you take out that first drive, they were, can I do some math here? 2 for 9 from the second drive on. So, the number one thing that you're going to have to do for this offense is you're going to have to stay on the field. Regardless of what you do, you can't be in a situation where you're at your own 25 on a touchback. You go 3 and out, you punt to them, they get the ball around the 30, and then you're just behind the 8 ball the entire time. But a lot of coaches, if you talk with them, they'll always tell you if they're being outmatched and they know that, it's going to be an uphill battle to win the game, you've got to win the field position game. So you win that by, okay, if you're at your own 25, getting the ball at least to the 40, to the 45, so you can flip the field and force the other team to go 90, to force them to go 85, because so much can happen in the game where, miscues can happen for the other team's offense, penalties. There's a lot of things that can matriculate into things like that. If Florida's offense can't stay on the field like they did against Miami and Texas A&M, it's a wrap. So you have to find a way to get first downs for the offense.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that gets back to what I was saying a minute ago about Florida's got to make this game a little bit of a rock fight. And they got to make it kind of ugly and gross and just sort of a brutal game to watch. And the way you do that, like you said, is you stay on the field. You need a lot of drives like that first drive against UCF, like you just mentioned, 4 for 4 on third down, where it just feels like you've been on the field for forever. And it needs to get to a point where the broadcast is like, man, I haven't seen Nico Iamaleava in that Tennessee offense in a long time. It's been, 25 minutes of real time between a couple commercial breaks and Florida staying on the field and stuff like that. Like that is a method that can help Florida. If Florida turns the ball over a couple times, if Florida is not staying on the field, it's going to get ugly fast, to your point. And to some comments here, we've had 2 questions already about the same thing. James Henley and K Swiss, shout out K Swiss, good name. Both of them are about if basically Florida gets blown out, is Billy going to be fired after the game? We've talked about this ad nauseum, Dylan, about what kind of could set Scott Strickland or the boosters or whoever's making that decision over the edge. Man, I don't really know, to be honest. I guess if the game's ugly enough, but we've already kind of eyed that bye week after Kentucky to be the time to do it if they're going to end up doing it. I would tend to think that almost no matter what, they're probably going to keep Billy around after this game. And then the Kentucky game, if they lose both of them and you've got that bye heading into Georgia, I think that's probably when Billy Napier's head will be on the chopping block. But here and now, let's keep talking about football. Realistically, Dylan, because we just talked about the formula to maybe if they pull off a miraculous win. Realistically, I don't think they're going to win this game. So realistically, what's a best case scenario for the Gators to hang on and leave Gator fans feeling okay about it at the end of the game?
You do what I said and have the field. Your offense stays on the field. You don't go 3 and out. Defensively, it's got to start with the run game. I know everybody's going to talk about Nico and the quarterback and throwing the ball and whatever. This offense is still predicated on the run game. They weren't able to do anything against Arkansas in the first half because I think they had, I believe, like less than 20 yards rushing. Then the second half, they got it rolling. So if you're able to do just those 2 things, you can have a ball game once you get into the second half. Because, I mean, Graham, you lived in Tennessee for a little bit of time. You know a lot of Tennessee fans. I mean, once that crowd gets going, and once you're down, it's going to be hard to get back in that ball game. And I mean,
it's one of the best crowds in college football.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a team and a fan base that, yes, Tennessee beat Florida 2 years ago with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, and the game came down to the wire. But I saw a stat that said the last 19 years, Tennessee's only beaten Florida, Georgia, and Alabama 4 times, which is just wild. These are for them. They thought it was going to be NC State. That was going to be their measuring stick game. And NC State's not good. They're starting a true freshman quarterback. They're kind of a rebuild year. Oklahoma thought it was going to be. Oklahoma's really not there yet. And I don't know that if they consider this as a measuring stick game, but they really want this game. This is always a rival where you throw out the record, throw out, whatever is at stake. They're always come ready to play this game. I think for Florida to have a chance, it starts with the run game, the defensive front. And the times they want to throw the ball in the first half, you have to put some type of pressure at the quarterback, because if he sits back there, like what happened against A&M in Miami, you can chalk this one up.
Yeah. You got to do what Florida did in the first half against UCF and send pressure pretty consistently. Because look, at least for me as a Gator fan watching the game, knowing how bad this pass rush has been at certain times in the season so far, nothing's going to get my blood boiling more than watching this game and seeing Nico just have time to sit back there in the pocket and drink a cup of coffee, get something to eat, call his mom, take a nap. If that happens, I'm going to be pissed. Look, if Florida sends pressure and gets beat sending pressure, I'll live with it a little bit more, because at least they gave it a shot. At least at that point you said, okay, we're coming after this guy. We're not going to engage 8 every time, but we're at least going to send 1, maybe 2 at times, and speed up his clock a little bit. He's a young quarterback. Like, hopefully in that world, then you can maybe create an environment where he's going to make some mistakes, not necessarily, hopefully turnovers, but even if not turnovers, just miss a guy, incomplete pass, get sacked here and there, get them behind the chains, like that type of thing. K-Swiss says, appreciate you guys. Love this podcast. Go Gators. K-Swiss, we appreciate you, sir. And then Iceman 333 says, the fact that y'all keep trying to convince us it's turned around after them beating 2 garbage teams is hilarious. Iceman, I would challenge you to ask what podcast you were listening to, because Dylan and I have fired Billy Napier about 4 times on this show. Under no circumstances have we ever said it. I just told you that beating Tennessee would be a complete miracle this week. Like, that ain't going to happen. The best case scenario is that at the start of the 4th quarter, it's somewhat competitive. Anyways.
People hear what they want to hear.
Of course. That was interesting. But, okay, so is that the path then, Dylan? Are they just going to send 5 or 6 basically every play the whole game to try to just keep up with Tennessee? Because if they got 3 guys on the line of scrimmage like they do all the time, that running attack is going to run all over them. It's going to be 200, 250 yards rushing, and then it's not even going to matter what Nico Iamaleava does at that point, because they're going to be running all over it. We've talked about this before, and a lot of people have talked about this on other shows. When you think Tennessee, you think high-powered offense, deep ball, chuck it deep, up-tempo, all that. Tennessee, if Josh Heupel is having his way, he's running the football a lot. He's running the football. He's getting downhill. He's going up-tempo to get your defensive lineman tired, and then he's just bowling your ass over. And then knowing that your D-line are tired, knowing you got to send pressure, now I'm throwing it over your head. That's the Josh Heupel way. I think they just got to start sending guys from the jump. And again, like I said a minute ago, if they get beat, they get beat. We just got to live with that. But Florida doesn't have the dudes on the defensive line to just send 3 or 4 all game and actually get home and make a difference.
No, and against that UCF team, it felt like they brought a lot more pressure than they have been in previous games. It almost felt like Todd Grantham was the defensive coordinator for some of those plays. as much pressure as they brought. But another thing that Tennessee is going to do that they haven't seen this year is they're going to put their receivers out, rather be 4 or 5 receivers, and they're going to put both guys all the way out to the sideline and spread the field.
Like you could like fist bump the other coach on the sideline.
Yes. And when you do that, an offense tries to do that to put less guys in the box so you can run the ball. Now, last year, Florida had a great defensive game plan, and it worked. Tennessee drove down, I think, the first drive of the game. For them, they scored a touchdown, and then they pretty much stalled until like 5-6 minutes left in the game. And another thing, too, if they can get a somewhat pass game going, that's a cause for concern. Because we all know the secondary and the safeties have been out of alignment for how many times now? The first 2 games of the year.
Right.
But, I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. You've got to stop the run, number one. And then, heaven forbid, if they can and they can get a pass game going, this secondary, Jason Marshall's played well. And you've had a couple of guys play well so far. But, how many times have we seen the last couple of years since Heupel went to Tennessee where teams like Alabama, who's had a good defense, just get lost with, communication. I thought you had this, and then next thing you know, Jalen Hyatt's going 70 yards downfield with not even somebody within 20 yards of his radius.
Yeah.
That can't happen. That cannot happen.
No, the passing game specifically for Tennessee, Dylan, is designed to, and this is why, Jalen Hyatt has struggled in the NFL so far. He's done borderline nothing in the NFL as a first-round pick. Those guys don't always translate to – I'm not going to say every guy, but they don't always translate well to the league because this offense is perfect for college because it predicates on – at least the passing part of it is predicated on forcing your DBs to make a mistake. And your college DBs are most likely going to make mistakes. You're going to stay up tempo, first of all, so you're going to give them no time to think. You're going to put them all the way out wide, like you said. They stack guys, they bunch guys, they leave guys, really close. They leave 2 receivers really close to each other, 10 yards down the field, and they're splitting off. And the corner and the safety got to know who they got. And those young college DBs make mistakes a lot like that. Unfortunately, for the orange and blue team that's going to be there, no disrespect, but there's a guy named DJ Douglas in that secondary that makes a mistake or 2 or 12 a game. So I'm just being honest, and I think most people watching this understand this. Like, don't be surprised if you see a Tennessee wide receiver, if you see, on the broadcast, Iamaleava chuck one, they pan down the field, and you see the receiver, and there's not an orange and blue jersey in the frame. Don't be surprised if you see that because it's going to stress these safeties hard and these corners hard to make sure they know what the hell they're doing on every play. And we've seen multiple games so far this year where they don't.
Yeah, another thing, too, that we haven't really talked about, and it probably won't be, and that could have an impact on the game, is special teams. Tennessee's got one of the best returners in the country in Squirrel. Was he number 10, I think he is?
Yeah, Squirrel White.
Yeah, Squirrel is pretty good. If
one of the best names in college football, by the way.
Yes. I mean,
Squirrel White and General Booty are like top 2.
Those 2, and then you have Speedy Noyle at Texas A&M, who was a fast guy.
That's it, yeah. But that was a while ago.
Yeah, that was about 7 years ago. If Florida is able to do the things like I said earlier and have good field position, and then you give up a nice return, that's going to be another thing. And Florida's had some bad special teams in the past. I think they've been decent special teams so far this year. The long snappers went down and got a couple of nice tackles. I can't think of a single punt return where, one got away for, a nice return. Off the top of my mind, they might have. But, that's another factor that Florida's going to have to worry about. And, if it's me, I don't punt at the damn dude. I'll put the ball out of bounds. Those guys that can change the game when you're in an uphill battle. If it's out of bounds at, a punt being 45 yards with no chance of him returning it, that's what you do. Instead of punting it maybe 55, maybe you get a chance for it to roll. That would be my kind of strategy. But I don't coach college football.
Zach in the chat just commented, and I was trying to find if they had a recent update. We're supposed to get an update today. Squirrel White and their Tennessee's really good tight end, Brew McCoy, are both questionable for the game. They got hurt against Arkansas. So they may or may not play. What's up?
I said I did see that with McCoy.
Yeah, so that's the same with Squirrel as well. Obviously that'd be huge for Florida if they don't play. Shout out Zach for reminding me of that because I saw it the other day, but I kind of completely forgot, to be honest. Rod also commented that Heupel is undefeated when they rush for over 200 yards. That sounds about right because you and I were at the Tennessee game last year, and you said it early in the game, and you're absolutely right. Teams that want to run up tempo and they want to get downhill on you, there's two ways to slow them down: penalties and incompletions. What did Tennessee have a lot of last year in that game? Penalties and incomplete. Joe Milton was all over the place. He was not accurate. He was making bad decisions left and right through a bunch of incompletions that slowed them down. And I think the crowd affected them a little bit. Their offensive line wasn't quite as good last year as it is this year. A lot of holding penalties, a lot of false starts, and that really, I think, screwed them up. I don't anticipate that being the same problem this year. And also they got a quarterback now that if somebody's open 30, 40, 50 yards down the field, this quarterback's going to hit him.
I think
they get bailed out as much.
I think at the end of the day, and then this will be the last thing I say before we roll out of here. I mean, I'm not really impressed by what Florida's done the last two games. You've beaten up on the bad teams that you should have done. And I know that going into the UCF game, we thought it was going to be a really good game, and we thought UCF was going to be a lot better. It's not the case. I think it's a close game, middle of the third quarter, and then Tennessee just finds something on offense, whether it's, a defensive lapse in the second level of our defense. And I think Tennessee does end up winning by 17. That's the spreads that stayed at 16 points for the degenerates out there like myself. And I think it opened at 17, went down to 15.5 at some books. I think Tennessee covers. And I think Tennessee gets a win. And I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think Billy, not saying that this offense is good, but he knows what this offense can do and the constraints of not let this game get away. And hopefully Trayon Webb can go, because if Trayon Webb can play, you can really have a rotation of good backs. And, we'll see with Mizell and Eugene Wilson, because if Eugene Wilson and Mizell can't go, you are very hamstrung to what you can do on the offensive side with home run balls. And you're just hoping to, strategically move the ball down the field at, 10, 12 yards at a clip.
And if you're running the ball effectively and you're running right at them and you're staying ahead of the chains, then Pierce isn't going to be able to just pin his ears back on obvious passing downs and just crush Florida's offensive line. Because I'm worried about that, man. Like, that guy's a top 10 pick, dude. Even against good offensive lines, like, that's the type of guy that's going to feast. So if you can – and the way you neutralize great pass rushers is your rushing attack and staying ahead of the chains and not getting in as many obvious passing situations as you can avoid. Something that I saw a minute ago from Zach, one good stat: Mertz will be the best passing quarterback the Vols have faced this season. That is a good point. I saw earlier from who it was. I want to check real quick. Sorry, this is great podcasting. I just want to say, from K Swiss, our boy K Swiss. The dinking and dunking from Mertz is not going to cut it Saturday night. K Swiss, I love you, but I do disagree with that, actually. Florida's going to have to be incredibly disciplined, obviously, and that's going to be hard in front of that crowd, to avoid as many false starts and holding penalties and whatnot to stay ahead of the chains. But this is actually a game where I think if they're doing it effectively, dinking and dunking down the field and getting 4 yards, 5 yards, 7 yards, and just methodically staying on the field, that's honestly, if you can do it effectively, that's a big if, but if you can do that effectively, that's honestly a good game plan against this team, because you need to sustain drives. You need to keep them off the field. And Florida getting the running game going a little bit, which has gotten going a little bit better these last couple of weeks, like you said, getting Webb back, and then all of a sudden you got a nice stable of Webb, Montrell, Baugh, Jacoby Jackson, them getting going, and Mertz just keeping the chains moving and hitting. If they play Mizell here, Wilson here, Boardingham here, and just methodically moving down the field, that's a world where Florida stays in this game. And this offense is not explosive anyways. Even with Lagway throwing great passes, it's not like Lagway is going to go out there and throw for 300 yards in his 4 possessions or whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I see a like a 38, 35 to 21 kind of game.
35-21 type. Okay. I think Florida keeps a little closer. Actually, they're still going to lose, but I think I'll say 35-31.
So close game.
I saw one last thing, Dylan, that I want to bring up, and then we can get out of here. I saw it's from a podcast. I forgot what the podcast is called, but I see their clips all the time. Basically talking about how in the long run it's actually better for Florida to lose this game because it helps expedite the process of Billy Napier getting fired. I don't agree with that because I think Billy Napier's going to be probably fired regardless. Because, again, we've talked about this before. Like, I got news for you. Even if Florida somehow pulls out a miraculous victory against Tennessee, a miraculous victory against Tennessee creates a perfect recipe for them to lose to Kentucky at home next week, by the way. And then even if they beat Kentucky, like, that'd be great. That'd be positive to take from. They still got to go play Georgia. They still got to go to Texas. Like, trust me, there's more opportunities for them to look bad. And by that point, if they're winning and being competitive in games like that, then I will be sold to keep him back. I don't think that's going to happen. But the reason I disagree with that is it's a little bit like in the NFL why you don't always just straight up tank once you're like mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, because you got a locker room that's competitive and wants to win football games, and you've got guys that you're trying to develop. And I understand in this era of transfer portal and NIL, probably a lot of guys are going to leave the program after Billy Napier gets fired, most likely. But that doesn't change the fact that the guys that do end up staying, the guys that whoever you bring in with a new coach, he does end up ultimately convincing to keep, still have a really valuable year of football to be competitive, get better, win reps, and do things. And big wins like that can create momentum for dudes like Aiden Mizell, like Tank Hawkins, like DJ Lagway, like LJ McCray, like dudes like that. These are young football players in their college career that need to continue to get better, continue to see things work, continue to see results on the field, and have the confidence so that, assuming Napier does get fired later this year and you're bringing a new guy, these are dudes that are playing with confidence and might want to stick around a little bit.
Yeah. Just thinking right now, October 9th, before we play Tennessee, I think Billy stays the whole year, regardless of what happens. Barring he gets blown out by 40 every game, which I don't think happens. I think he looks decent enough these next 2 weeks. They keep him during the bye week. They keep him for Georgia, and then he coaches the rest of the year. And then he'll be 5-7, 6-6. And then
Johnny in the chat says, I don't get the loser mentality. We should always want our Gators to win. Agree with that. Hard agree with that because, again, it's just what I was saying. Like, these players deserve a competitive football team and the ability to get themselves better and get themselves prepared for down the road. Hopefully in a Gator uniform with all intents and purposes. Rod Smith says he's fired. I would keep him all the way out. You save $7.7 million if he coaches out. I agree with that too, Rod. Like, again, like Dylan said, unless they get blown out by 40 every game, and we talked about this the other week, Dylan, like, as much as we all wish it could, it's October 9th. Firing him today doesn't allow you to fast forward to the end of November when eligible coaches are going to actually be able to talk to you. So if they fired him, it would really just be to feel better and give the fans something to be happy about, which matters. That matters. I'm not saying that's irrelevant. But it has to get bad enough to where that's actually advantageous enough for it to make sense. Because otherwise, what's the point if I can't go hire me a new coach anyways, right? These talks are going to become a lot more real like week of and then after the Florida State game. Now we're really starting to have those types of conversations. In the meantime, let's watch Gator football. Let's use this podcast to talk Gator football, and let's break down how they can maybe stay competitive in some of these difficult games and hopefully pull off a miraculous win or two in the meantime.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we'll talk around 10:15-ish Saturday night and give you a little post game and go from there.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. Have a good one.